Hi, everyone. My name is Kirk Bachman, and welcome back to The Ultimate Dish. In today's episode, we're speaking with Shawn Wenner, owner of Pastry Arts Magazine and Entrepreneurial Chef. Shawn is a dynamic entrepreneur and owner of Entrepreneurial Chef, a digital platform and online community that unites all types of food entrepreneurs to share real lessons and practical advice with one another. He's also the owner of Pastry Arts Magazine, a full-blown multimedia platform for the pastry community. Join us today as we chat with Shawn about his journey from an institutional culinary arts professional to a global media powerhouse in the food service industry. Shawn, welcome, buddy. Thank you so much for...
You're making me blush, Kirk.
Gosh. No, I love that part, man. It's so good first to see you. I think the last time we ran into each other was at the National Restaurant Association show when you could still, come together in downtown Chicago and meet without masks and all that, right?
That's right. That's when we can give each other a bro hug.
There you go. So how's Florida? How's the family? It's been a long 20 months, right? Hold up and
it has. It's been a crazy ride. What was very interesting is in 2019, my wife and I set out to move. And so we put both of our houses up on the market. We had a rental property as well as our primary. And we sold them October and January. We got into a contract for a new house in February. We closed March 16th. And by March 24th, we went into lockdown. So it was a crazy ride, doing this with two kids. So it was about 9 months of just intense movement. And then boom, we hit this lockdown and global pandemic and kids are out of school. We're juggling like everybody's story. So it has absolutely been a wild ride, but a lot of things to be blessed for sure.
Yeah, nothing like getting used to your brand new house by having to be in it for like a year. Now, when you said that, it brought chills to my spine because it was March 19th where we kind of sent our students home for a bit, right? And it all got kind of real. First I have to I'm so appreciative that you're here today. And I have to say first, congratulations. And just thank you for your amazing support, not only of Escoffier, but our industry. Like I said, I remember chatting with you, not only about the National Restaurant Association show, but at the show. And again, 80,000 people pouring into Chicago every single year. And it was completely derailed because of the pandemic. And then brilliant. You immediately pivoted and created the coolest thing in the world, this virtual pastry summit, to kind of keep people inspired and keep them motivated. And it was all virtual, right? It was really, really cool. And Escoffier was honored and super proud to be a part of it. Where did the inspiration come to pull that together literally in weeks? I mean, you didn't know the pandemic was coming, right?
Yeah. So great question. In response to your lead in, super big fans of what you all do, obviously, and having Frank Volkemer, Chef Frank Volkemer, a part of it, and just everything that you all do, and I think it was Anne Lanute that was a part of the first one, and then Frank in the second one. So appreciation goes both ways.
Super.
When the pandemic hit. It's actually funny, about a month before it hit, and it was really, things were getting to be a lockdown. We were moving out of our house, and I caught a news story about this virus or flu or whatever they were calling it, somewhere around February something. It was early February. And over the course of about 3 weeks, I started stocking up on some supplies. And my wife started just kind of looking at me like I was crazy. And I said, I just feel like something is going to happen here. I just feel like something's brewing. And sure enough, that happened. And so when that happened, I really kind of had a bit of a head start. And what I mean by that happened when people started going into lockdown, things were closing down. I kind of had a head start with eyeing this thing coming. And because of that, I kind of saw things unfolding because I was very in tune with it. And I saw what it started doing to the restaurant industry, and I saw what it started doing to professionals. And for the pastry platform, we had a Facebook group, and I just could see what was happening. And because of that, I just had this overwhelming urge to create something that was going to keep people inspired, that was going to be encouraging and inspirational and educational. I saw all of these live shows get canceled. And I told our team, I said, look, I've never done a virtual summit before. I can't tell you exactly what to do, but I'm just going to research it and let's just pull it together. We reached out to places like you and, other schools and our brand partners. And we totally did this free thing. And we did it for all brand partners too. We didn't ask for sponsors, nothing, because we knew everybody was hurting. So we said, look, let's just try and do something that's going to keep the industry alive. As when I say industry, the pastry industry specifically, because this was with the pastry platform. And in a matter of 8 weeks, we pulled together. Everybody shot videos during lockdown. Some people were in their home kitchens, and some people had access to their restaurants to be able to shoot some things. And so people shot some things. We pulled it all together. We did this virtual summit. It went so well over the course of about 9 months. We left it open, the first one. We had about 21 or 22,000 people attend this thing. And so we ended up doing it again, and now it's going to be a staple. But that was where it was born. It was born out of just wanting to keep the inspiration, education going at a time when everybody was hurting.
I know that this year's summit, there were well over 50 demonstrations, right? I reviewed Frank's again this morning as I was preparing for, just so well done, right? How about that first year? How many people did you have that jumped on board?
It was almost identical, right?
Wow,
so I think the first one we had around 60 to 65 videos, about 25, 27 hours of content. The second one, I think we were trying to cap it at around 50 because we realized we just threw, so much in there.
Yeah.
And we had, I want to say 50 to 55 videos in the second one. We just opened it in June, and it'll stay open through the remainder of the year, probably a little bit at the beginning of next year before we do the next one in 2022. And it was about 24, 25 hours of content again, overall.
It's just amazing. And it really speaks to the empathy and also the motivation of the industry, that people, just jumped on board, and the quality is unbelievable. Right. So yeah, kudos to you again. It's just so neat. So let's dive in a little bit. When we think culinary, we always, or often I should say, think chef, right? Or someone who prepares food, right? And you've worked for many years sort of behind the scenes, right? Helping to manage the administrative or the operational aspects of culinary institutions and businesses. So how and when did you discover sort of your passion for helping aspiring cooks, aspiring chefs, food entrepreneurs, and what perspective then, Shawn, has that provided for your career path? Because that was a big change. You were at Le Cordon Bleu, sort of an administrative person for, I want to say, a decade. And this is a big change, kind of a risk, right? Jumping into this entrepreneurial sort of career path, right? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So number one, my background, I was always a very creative person, musician, artist. I was very big into the arts and just very, very creative. And I'll put a pin in that because that's going to come into play later. I took a couple of different career paths early on and went to school for a couple of different things. And I was just one of those that I just didn't see anything that really resonated with me. And then I saw an advertisement to work at a culinary school, right? So in the admissions side. So went, looked at it, and just after starting there, I just fell in love. I fell in love with the people, the personalities, the food. And I started recognizing in chefs and culinarians a piece that resided in me. And that's that creative kind of artist type of individual. And so I just felt very at home. And so that led me to stay there for many, many years. And I just was fascinated, and I learned a lot. And after some time, the colleges closed down in the United States. They still kept the cordon bleu globally, but they closed all of them in the United States. So I sat back and I was laid off, right? So I was about 32, 33, maybe it was 34. I forget, and was laid off here, and I had never experienced that. And I'll tell you, I had a complete identity crisis. I mean, complete identity crisis. It was one of those moments where, if you've ever seen a movie where the hero of the story has the lowest part, and they put their back up against the wall and they start crying and they slide down and they put their head into their knees, that probably could encapsulate how I felt every single week after week after week, because working there for so many years is all I knew at that point. It became my identity, working with culinarians and seeing the students in the education industry and the inspiration and the food. It was my identity. And so to have that just completely stripped away, it was a very big shock to me, just a very big shock. So I kind of sat back and I had to then make some decisions. And the decision was, do I just apply to a lot of different places? Do I try and build something of my own? And, speaking candidly, I did both. I applied to some schools, some culinary schools in the area. I started sketching out what would be later the beginnings of Entrepreneurial Chef platform. And so what happened was, I realized that I wanted to do something meaningful. I wanted to do something based upon my experience. I wanted to do something based upon my interest and my curiosities. And I had to find that center point. And eventually I did. It took me maybe about 12, 14 months. And I eventually found that. And that is where I said, I understand culinarians. I understand the world of food. I understand food business. I love education. I love educating people. I love business in general. And I said, why don't I help all of these culinarians that come out of culinary school with hopes of owning their own place, and help them become successful food entrepreneurs? And that interested me. That was something that I could see myself being very passionate about. So long story short, that was the beginning of Entrepreneurial Chef. It was a platform for food entrepreneurs. So the idea was to interview the most successful people in the industry. We're talking, Michelin star chefs and things of that nature, and not ask them about their techniques or their recipes or, any of that, but to ask them about their marketing plans, ask them about their operational structures, ask them about, what do they do to drive customer loyalty, right? All of these things that I know takes to be, it takes those things to become very successful in the field. But I've seen culinarians in culinary school, and a lot of times they focus on the techniques and the proficiencies, and that is great because that's the foundation, but that doesn't equate to a successful business, right?
Sure,
and
sure.
so all of that kind of led me to start building that platform. And to be honest, I wake up every day, and I have since I started on my own, and I just start conceptualizing, what do I want to do? What do I want to focus on? What new thing do I want to build? How do I want to help people in this industry? And that leads me to these ideas that led me to Pastry Arts Magazine, the summit, and all the different things in between. So that's kind of the journey that I took.
Yeah, it's really respectful too. We have an entrepreneurial sort of component to the Escoffier curriculum as well, and I just have to applaud you for making that connection, right? Identifying as a successful restaurateur, a chef, a cook, as also a very successful business person, right? Do you think you were a little ahead of your time with that concept?
I would say there were definitely conferences that had workshops as it relates to that. There were some business magazines that had some chefs right around the time when I was really in the thick of building Entrepreneurial Chef. So I think that I would say not the absolute early adopter, but definitely early in the sense of getting Michelin star chefs to really break down the economics of their business, and not even just Michelin star chefs, but really successful people with multi-million dollar businesses and brands and big personalities. I was not asking them about the recipes and things, as I had mentioned, but getting them to talk about those things. Yes, that was the white space that I identified, that there wasn't a unified place, and there wasn't just a very heavy-handed focus to bring these big personalities that people look up to and have them talk about the economics of their business and how do they build it, and the struggles too. That was one of the biggest things. That there's something that we'll talk about later, but just the struggles that they experience, because I feel as though, especially with the birth of social media, people see the tip of the iceberg and they don't see the struggle that went behind the building of a chef's personal brand or a chef's business, if you will. So all of that. So yeah.
No, and in such a powerful presentation too. I remember the first time I saw Daryl Schuler, like larger than life on the, full blown. I mean, it's really about the chef, right? It's not a lot of sidebar articles and such. It's really a focus on that chef. So it's pretty clear, Shawn, that you've got this this keen eye, right, for discovering gaps in the industry, and then you create solutions. And I love that. Hopefully profitable solutions, right? And so when you're scanning the industry, and it's changed a lot over the last 20 months, right? For areas of opportunity, what do you look for, and how do you analyze the validity of your ideas? It seems like there's a lot of risk, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a great question, because when you're in the building phase of a business or an idea, at least for me early on, all I was focused on was that. All I was focused on was how to make it successful.
Okay.
Now, with some experience, I then start scanning for what's going to put me out of business and what's going to just completely change the dynamic of the industry that I'm playing in. And that's something that it took some experience and it took learning and a whole lot of reading. But now it's to the point where if I'm scanning for an opportunity, there's a couple of different things, right? You have to question, is there a market for it, right? You have to then understand, what industry are you playing in, right? And some people think, and especially me early on, I thought I was building something that was a one of one. No, I was in the publishing business, right? So I didn't realize that till later on. And so you have to understand what industry you're in. And now I do research on the industry as a whole, right? So for me, we'll talk publishing for a minute, publishing and media. If I were thinking about doing another media or publishing entity, I'd look at the publishing space. Is it going up year over year? Is it going down? What are the things that are coming into existence that are disrupting the publishing industry? And so anybody that's creating an idea, that's something that it's just so powerful that I would recommend you do, is just understand the industry that you're in. Where is the industry trending? Is it trending up? Is it trending down? If it's trending down, do you have such a brilliant idea that you're going to then break that cycle, right? Or not? So, for me, I scan the industry, I look at the market opportunity, and now my thresholds have changed. You had said, hopefully successful in terms of, the things that I've done, and they were, right? I had an initial threshold and I hit it. I had another threshold and I hit it. And so then that brought about some confidence, and now I have higher thresholds. It just comes as you grow and you get more successful. Yeah. So now I look at that too. I look at what's going to be a revenue number that I would like to hit. And then one of the biggest things I do is I reverse engineer it, right? So I literally take a piece of paper and a pen and say, okay, if I want to have X amount of dollars in revenue, right? What do I guesstimate? Just really guesstimation, but what's the cost going to be? What's the profit margin that I think it's going to be? If I'm playing in X industry, Is that a profit margin that's typical for these types of businesses? And then I back in even further and I say, well, how many customers do I want to serve, and what's going to be the average order for each customer, and how am I going to get there? So I do a little math, right? And because you may have this idea, but it's just so good to play out those economics, even if it's just a wild guess, because it's so eye-opening to do that. So one of the ventures within one of the businesses that I have is that's what we did. We said, okay, we're going to do this thing, and we want to serve 1,000 customers. And to get to X number of revenue with X number of profit, we need to charge X number of dollars. Is this a dollar amount that we think those 1,000 people would pay? Yes, great. Let's move forward. If the answer is no, we need to work out the economics. And now we back into that, right? And so anyway, when I'm scanning an opportunity, I look at the economics of it. I look at the market. I look at the industry. And then the last thing I say is I have to be passionate about it. It's got to be something that I'm so either curious about, interested in, or absolutely passionate about. And those are three points on I would say a linear spectrum, right? Because curiosity is what begins an interest, and then interest is what feeds into a passion, right? So I hear some people say, do what you're passionate about, do what you're passionate about. And for years I say, well, I don't know what I'm passionate about, but what am I curious about? What am I curious about? Because that curiosity could lead to an interest, that interest could lead to a passion. So that's one big thing that I have to have as well when I'm looking at an opportunity or scanning for things, is that it's got to be something that I can wake up every morning, even if my kids are sick, my 2 and 4-year-old, and I'm up with them like 2 nights ago at 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. Even on a day like that, I still wake up at 7, 8, 9 o'clock, ready to go, ready to dive in. So those are some of the things.
I love that. When I hear you speaking, it's not terribly different than our business as well, right? You've got to set goals for yourself, and you've got to listen to each other. Has some of this incredible work parlayed into some unexpected consulting opportunities as well? I imagine people want to talk to Shawn, right?
It has. And you know, about 2-3 years in, and I think maybe about 4 years in, so it led to some of that. And then I then had to kind of back it down a little bit. I will still do it a little bit, but it depends on the project, but I had to back it down because ultimately one of my goals is that I don't want to be time dependent. I don't want my income to be dependent upon my time, right? I want that to have a complete divergence, right? So it's very hard when you are doing some of those, consulting. So now I value my time so highly that it just has to be a special something. But yes, there are opportunities that pop up from time to time. And sometimes they pop up and I'm just so vastly curious and interested, and I see a challenge that I'll say yes. I'll open up here and say, I've actually consulted several companies over the past year completely for free, because I said, look, I don't want to have a scenario where you're paying for my time and we get into this contract. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you that I'm going to help you for maybe one day out of a month, right? If I miss that day because I'm insanely busy, I'm sorry, but this is why I don't want you to pay me. But I'm so interested in helping you, and this is such a challenge to me that I want to help you, right? So I've done that from time to time as well.
Bravo. So let's talk about the last several months. Clearly the industry we love and are passionate about was decimated. Thousands of restaurants were forced to close, either temporarily or permanently. And those that have remained open have had to be really, really creative, right? And kind of change the way they do things. Are there some, I know some of this might be private, but are there some super creative or even ingenious ways that you've seen business pivot during this time? And how has your product evolved alongside what's gone on in the industry over the last 20 months?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've seen a lot of different things over the course of the past year and a half or 2 years. And one of the things with Pastry Arts Magazine, more specifically in the Pastry Summit, one of the focuses this year was around the topic of business and in entrepreneurship, dessert entrepreneurship, as we say it with the pastry industry or Pastry Magazine. And so we talked to people who did things like pop-ups, who created a virtual bakery, who partnered with some sort of company that was still thriving even during the pandemic, to then provide meals or food or bonuses, cookies, cakes, all of that stuff. So and then I saw one of the ones recently as well, and I'll speak a little bit more to that one because I thought it was fascinating, and I haven't done a lot of research on it, but I did see where there was a very successful YouTuber, all right, a very successful YouTuber, who then, I believe, as the story goes, again, I did not do a whole bunch of research on this, but a trusted individual told me about this, so I've got to research it a little bit. So I'm going to say what I heard, but just anybody listening, do your own research, DYOR, as you say. So that said, I believe an entity or a person that ran a ghost kitchen connected with that successful YouTuber for the YouTuber to create a food brand that then would be sold out of these ghost kitchens.
Brilliant.
And then I saw it again, and I thought, that's a very interesting thought for people who know, culinarians or chefs, to then potentially proposition somebody in their area, somebody, some famous person that's in their area, and say, look, I am, you are the brand, the personality, it's your brand, but I can be, the chef to this, right? And help bring it to life, right? It's a totally different, way to think about continuing on your craft as a chef and producing food. But now, one of the reasons why food businesses thrive is traffic. Well, what happens when you don't have traffic, right? Foot traffic, if you will, then that's going to start going down. So now you have to get, online traffic. Well, why is partnering with a kind of, I don't want to say quasi celebrity, if you will, but like someone that has a presence like that, a YouTuber, if you will, it's important, or not important, it could work because they have traffic, right? So I saw that. The other things, as I had mentioned, was definitely virtual bakeries or virtual kitchens. I saw and talked to a lot of people that did that successfully. They very simply went to Shopify. They signed up for Shopify. They took pictures of their stuff. They started telling their neighborhood about it. They started doing drops, porch drops, I think some people refer to it as, where someone submits an order on Shopify on their website. And then from there, they have a certain day where then they deliver the food out. And people were continuing their craft. They were either supplementing their income or replacing their income by doing something like that. The ghost kitchen model was definitely very interesting. Partnering with companies that are being successful, that's kind of hit or miss, and it can take a lot to reach out to them. So I didn't have too many stories of that, but definitely transitioning to that virtual space or partnering up with places that seem to be doing really well.
That's great. That's great. Let's talk a little bit about the magazines. I love on the landing page of Entrepreneurial Chef. And I hope I get this right. The quote is something like, "Food entrepreneurs are made, not born." I had to read it a couple of times. I'm like, is that backwards, or is that no? I absolutely love it. And I know you've talked a lot about your journey and how you got here, but I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about whether they were good or bad key choices that you made along the way to get where you are today. Pandemic aside, right? Were there some really pivotal moments, especially for the students that are listening, because, we talk a lot about entrepreneurship and we try to talk about bumps in the road, but we can never really, simulate that, right? We can talk about it, but were there some good bumps in the road, and were there some tough bumps in the road?
So speaking very candidly, and I've said this on other shows before, is that I believe it took me 16 months roughly. And I think at that point I made $150 So it took me that, and now I was already in the negative because it took time and energy and money to then build this thing. So
Sure.
now this was initially it was just a complete solo venture. And the funny thing is about that $150 check that I got, I lost it.
You can't even make that up. Yeah.
I can't make it up. I know I lost it because I found it a year later, stuck in some journal or book, and now I never cashed it. And now this is kind of like my rite of passage, that I went through that now is framed. But, when you're working on something of your own, there's so many twists and turns. I think me being such an optimistic person, I looked through things with rose-colored glasses, and I always see the upside. I'm always that pot. I don't want to say always, but 90%, 90%. I see the glass is half full. I see the opportunity and all of these different things, and that kind of, it was a blessing and a curse, because when things didn't evolve or things didn't happen, I felt like my enthusiasm and my motivation just went completely down flat. Mm-hmm. And so early on, it's really hard to manage your expectations of things. And I'd say that in hindsight, that was one of the biggest lessons for me as I move forward. And after I've reached a certain level of success and I continue to go on, is that I've learned to manage those expectations better. Because the difference, I think I read this, maybe it was a bumper sticker, but the difference between expectations, or your happiness or your sadness, is the difference between expectation and reality, right? Mm-hmm. So your difference between expectation and reality could be a massive driver of your level of motivation, your happiness or your sadness. And once I realized that, then I started managing my expectations better. Right? I didn't get so caught up in the highs. I didn't get sucked down into the lows. And I tried to remain a little bit more even keeled. So it is a very winding road when you start out. I'll fast forward and say, one of the reasons why it took so long is that I was doing it alone. And I kind of had that Superman syndrome, put the cape on, thinking that I can do it. And now I did it. But my cost was stress. I don't know, people who are listening can't see this, but you can go on YouTube. I think you can see my gray hair at 39 years old. This really started coming in when I ventured out, my mental energy just kept getting dumped on. And so anyway, there was a big cost to not doing that. And then doing something alone, I should say. Once we started Pastry, that was with a core team. Things went exponentially faster. Mm-hmm. And then I started realizing, okay, wait a minute. If you want to go fast, go alone, or whatever that saying is, right? You want to go far, go alone. You want to go fast, go together, or something. I'm probably botching it, but just reverse it if you Google it and it's wrong.
It's the key to scaling any business, right?
Yeah, it's exactly right. And that was the other big lesson that I had, is that, find someone that's trusted, protect yourself from a risk standpoint and from a legal standpoint, but find people that are trusted and try and work together potentially, or have people that you can just bounce ideas off of and collaborate. Just don't do things in a vacuum, right? So those are some of the big things that really helped me kind of get past.
So and speaking about the magazines, there's knowledge, there's tools, lots of resources that you share through the magazine in many ways, right? I would venture to guess that, and I'm sure you support this, that those tools, those resources are universal to entrepreneurs in any industry, right? Some of this stuff goes across businesses. In your opinion, especially for the students that'll listen, how should entrepreneurs leverage your platform, Entrepreneurial Chef's platform, to help them, better start at the beginning and run their own businesses? What's the best way to use the tools?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I'm going to actually flip it. This is going to sound a little strange, but I would say, first, if you have not read some of the staple books as it relates to business or entrepreneurship or branding or even personal development, I would say first you start there. Forget about Entrepreneurial Chef. I have nothing against someone like Napoleon Hill, who wrote The Laws of Success, right? I have nothing against Ryan Holiday, one of my favorite books, that wrote The Obstacle is the Way. I have nothing, when I say Entrepreneurial Chef has nothing against Michael Gerber, who wrote The E-Myth, or even a more recent one, Building a Brand Story by Donald Miller. You'll see there's a pattern to these. Building a brand story, your branding is so vital to your business. It's so vital. He breaks it down. The E-Myth, this is someone, Michael Gerber is someone that can teach you how to work on your business and not in your business, with great stories, right? The obstacle is the way. I've probably read this, I'm not lying, about 8 or 9 times in the past 7, 8 years. And the reason is because he does a fantastic job at getting you to manage your mind, right? His little tagline is the timeless art of turning trials into triumph. And his stories, they're quick, right? I was never a reader, right? And what I know about culinarians sometimes is that, some people might be mad, but typically the savory chefs were not big readers in the culinary school, and the pastry ones were, right? It just kind of comes with the territory. I, as an artist growing up, I was not a big reader, and I forced myself to read some of these books. And when I tell you my success, it started doing a hockey stick once I started not only reading these books, but really understanding the principles that they were trying to teach. And what you are going to learn is success leaves clues. Success leaves clues. And when you get exposed to highly successful people, it's at that point you can start seeing the commonality between them, right? What is there that is a part of their core makeup? That being said, because I read those books and I understand some of the core principles that it takes to be successful in business and entrepreneurship, I asked questions relating to that and those topics of our guest. So Daniel Ballou, right? Just amazing top level chef, right? I asked him about his customer acquisition, plan and strategy, and like, what did he do to foster loyalty, and like, how does he, what were the financials like, and what was the struggle he went through to then ultimately become just such a prominent figure in the world of culinary, right? And so to answer your question, embedded in either the website or some of the legacy magazine issues that we have in the app, are interviews with individuals where we have them speak to some of the core principles and strategies and things that they did to become successful. That's number one. And number two, I always ask them about their struggle. What was their struggle like, right? What did they have to go through? Because this is something that I didn't see when I was trying to build something. That's something when I see a lot of new entrepreneurs, they don't really see that struggle. You have to really live through that struggle. But the more people that you look up to, admire, and respect inform you in very specific ways of the struggle they went through, you then have a little bit of armor that's built. So when you go through it personally, it kind of bounces off you. It's still going to hurt. Trust me, it's still going to hurt, but it's going to bounce off you a little bit. And eventually it just gets thicker and thicker.
I just love this, Shawn. Am I the only one with chills listening to you speak? I mean, so powerful. Manage your mind. Success leaves clues. Totally stealing those both from you. But I stole them somewhere.
I stole them. No. Maybe I said it right here, right now, but I am not the first to say it ever. I promise you that.
Oh, I just love it. Funny story, somewhat related. You brought up Daniel Ballou. I was at an event in New York City years ago, right? Daniel Ballou, Eric Ripert are up on the stage talking about the industry, talking about their restaurants. Someone raises their hand and says, "Hey, who cooks in your restaurants when you're not there?" And Ripert almost sheepishly says, "The same people that cook when I am there." And I absolutely loved it. I love the fact that you asked Daniel those tough questions, right? Because they're probably going to expect, the easy questions, right? Like, you know, how many covers did you do last night, or what's your favorite technique? But to really
Sure. Or who would you love to have dinner with, right?
yeah,
Or what would
yeah,
you have for your last meal? Or I've seen those so many times
too
by
easy, too easy. Yeah,
big name magazines will get these big chefs and ask them those questions, and I can't help to scoff and roll my eyes. I feel like a teenager again.
got to push them a little bit. So, you know, you started down this path a little bit. The magazines capture, you know, these great stories and experiences of these various, you know, superstars, professional chefs, food entrepreneurs, and you've interviewed all types of culinary experts over the years. And again, including some very, very prominent chefs, Daniel Boulud, unbelievable, right? Are there one or two stories that you could share, favorites maybe? I mean, it's all published, right?
Yeah, completely. Yeah. You know, and I will say Entrepreneurial Chef, we talking about pivoting, right? So we're in midst of another pivot. We're doing an evolution. I can't say exactly what it is. So all of the issues of Entrepreneurial Chef, we call it legacy now. So we stopped actively publishing new issues. And right now we have, I don't know, 30 or 40 issues that are in the app. They're legacy issues. And so people, if you subscribe to that, you can get access to every single one. It's just open until we officially pivot and we're doing something new. In relation to, I had said, I always look for ways to put myself out of business, and I see some things that are coming that I'm now going to be pivoting. And so more to come, you know, in the coming year or so as it relates to that. That's number one. Number two, with the Pastry Magazine, we have some of the same types of individuals. And we still, even though it's Pastry Arts Magazine, because I'm such a fan of helping people become better as professionals, and I know it's not just techniques, Pastry Arts Magazine has columns like Business Bites, where all we talk about is the business side, right? We ask experts about, things like driving loyalty. How did they create a virtual bakery? How do they, do cost controls or whatever. So anyway, that said, favorite story, I will use one from Entrepreneurial Chef, and I'm going to use Daniel Boulud, because I forget the question that I asked him, quite frankly, but we were talking about him in the very early stages and what he did and how did he become successful and all of that. One of the things he did is he had an actual newsletter, a printed newsletter that he would do in his area and send out
to his customers,
newsletters, to customers, if you will. Yeah. So it was a very early form of content marketing that we know of today, right? Yeah. And one of the funny things is, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but it's very close. I think he didn't have a lot of money, and he would reuse some stamps. And he said this from time to time. And so he would kind of, reuse some of them, and he laughed and chuckled about it or whatever. Another thing is when he wasn't supposed to be, and this was captured in the magazine, when he wasn't supposed to be, I think he was maybe political asylum or something like that. He was a status where he wasn't like a U.S. resident. And he started creating, I think it was like desserts, the truffles, I think is what it was, or something. And he got in trouble. He got in trouble with, I think it was the embassy, because he wasn't supposed to be selling things. And so he was kind of engaged in, capitalism, if you will. And so it very, very, very funny. But he was by far one of my, I hate to say favorite. I've already said it, the cat's out of the bag, but he was by far one of my favorite. I just really liked him. I liked his personality, and hearing someone like that, who's just at the pinnacle of culinary success, just dial it all the way back to talk about just some of the struggles he went through and the uncertainty and working 100 hours week plus. And just hearing that, it made me smile, because nobody has an overnight success, right? Nobody has an overnight success. There's years and years in the making. So that would be one of those. And
he's done it in a way that he continues to be so well liked, right? And
absolutely
so respected. Yeah, just great story. What a great opportunity. Hey, Shawn, we're getting towards the end of our show today, and as you know, the the name of the podcast is The Ultimate Dish. So before I let you go, talk a little bit about your own personal food love and what is the ultimate dish in your household?
So this is really funny. I'm not a huge foodie in the sense that I need to have extravagant meals and things of that nature. I am really simple. For years now, I eat for fuel and I don't eat for pleasure. So I have a pretty strict routine, a dietary routine where I'm looking at micro and macronutrients and vitamins and things. And, so anyway, that said, as it relates to eating though, something that is incredibly important to me is family dinner. I got a 2-year-old and, I'm sorry, he just turned 3. I've got a 3-year-old and my 4-year-old turns 5 and tomorrow actually. And so when I started on my path, one of my big motivating factors was that I did not want to be an absent father. I wanted to be there. I grew up in a household that was very toxic. I grew up in a family that was very toxic. It then turned to be fractured, then turned to me being in complete isolation. And I just yearned for the day where I can change that. I can change that pattern. And, that ends with me, my generation, me as a generational, offspring. And that being said, I have maybe missed about 20 to 25 meals, no kidding, over the past of about 6 years with my kids. And it's very important to me that we sit down as a family, we have dinner, whatever it is that we're going to eat. My wife and I love sushi. So if you're asking for a food, we are fanatics about sushi. Nice. So we will absolutely go ballistic on some sushi. And then the kids 100% love pizza. So we will sometimes do a split or sometimes everybody has pizza. But the biggest thing to me is just to be there with my family. And so that's my last piece of motivation for people that are listening to this. If you do aspire to have a successful business, you do aspire to maybe make your business even that much more successful if you already have one, just keep in mind that, what are you doing this for? And if you're doing it for family and you're doing it for that kind of independence and just be able to control your time, I can tell you it's so worth it. But don't forget them as you're building. You got to have that balance while you're building, or else you're going to miss some things. So I was very fortunate to build a life now where I can be there for my kids every single day. And food is so important to us when we sit down and we eat together every single night.
So beautifully said. Thank you, Shawn. And thanks so much for being with us today. I hope
absolutely.
There's so much going on. I want you to come back. We'll reach out again in a few months and we'll talk more. I have a ton more questions, but we ran out of time. So thank you again for being here, buddy.
Sounds good. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much. Honored to speak to you all and anyone listening, and we will be in touch.
Awesome. Thanks, Shawn. Thank you for listening to the Ultimate Dish Podcast, brought to you by Auguste Escoffier School of Culinary Arts. Visit escoffier.edu/podcast, where you'll find any materials mentioned during the podcast, including notes, links, and other resources. You can also browse other episodes and subscribe.